Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So as we know, the deadline to find a venue for Fury versus Joshua is fast approaching. I believe it is sometime this weekend actually, within the next couple of days. So that date is fast approaching, and a lot of people in the boxing world are getting twitchy feet in regards to this fight actually happening next. And you know me, I've been relatively optimistic that this fight will happen next, but even I have to admit right now, I do have my doubts. Obviously, about a month ago, it was announced that the contracts had been signed for Fury and Joshua, and in that contract, there was a 28-day period where they had to find the venue, and that deadline is fast approaching. So, yeah, a lot of people right now are getting very nervous. One thing I will say, if both parties want this fight, I don't see the problem with extending that deadline just a little further to try and make something happen. If these guys were both deadly serious about fighting next, that should not be a problem. According to the media reports and what the fighters have said, it seems to be Tyson Fury who is really taking that deadline seriously. You know, he's posting various things on social media, TikTok and all of that shit. And his dad, of course, in recent weeks has said that Tyson Fury's been very inactive, and if this fight doesn't get made soon, he wants a fight in the interim. So, according to everything I've seen from both fighters, it seems like Tyson Fury's the guy who could be a problem in this situation. And if that is the case, when it happens, obviously I'll flame him out. But you know, the whole inactivity thing for me is not an excuse for Tyson Fury to prolong this fight or delay it. At the end of the day, Tyson Fury's rematch clause with Wilder expired, some point end of last year? I think it was October or something like that. So he's had ample time to have a tune-up fight in between at the end of the day. Top Rank have had several shows towards the end of last year, early this year, where Tyson Fury could have fought on, even if it's just a 10-rounder, you know, just to shake off the cobwebs and stay active. Tyson Fury's had opportunities where he could have fought a 10-rounder, you know, just to stay sharp, like they used to do in the old days where they would have a 10-rounder, the champion wouldn't even defend their title, and they would just stay active and stay sharp. Julio Cesar Chavez used to do that a lot in Mexico. So Tyson Fury could have fought if he really wanted to. So for me, that whole excuse doesn't really run with me, if I'm being honest. And yeah, I am a bit more concerned now about this fight not happening next. For whatever reason, I still think it will get announced next. Hopefully I'm right, but we'll see what happens with that. But in the event that this fight does not happen, what happens next? At the end of the day, if these two guys don't share the ring next against each other, then normal service has to be resumed. No shitty tune-up fights in the hope of trying to re-enter negotiations down the line. No, if these guys cannot fight next or don't fight next, no matter what the reason, then I expect these guys to take on top contenders. So for example, Anthony Joshua has Alexander Usyk waiting. If this fight does not happen, that's the fight I expect from Anthony Joshua. And by the way, Alexander Usyk is playing a good game right now in my opinion. Before signing that fight with Joe Joyce, if I was Alexander Usyk, I would be waiting on an official confirmation of Joshua versus Fury before I signed to fight Joe Joyce. I really would, because ultimately, if this fight does not get made next, then there's no reason why the WBO should not order Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk. The whole Joe Joyce situation was only there in the event that Tyson Fury versus Joshua happens. So if that fight does not happen next, I expect the WBO to order that fight, and I expect Anthony Joshua to fight him. As for Tyson Fury, we all know he's got a WBC mandatory in Dillian Whyte. Why not take that fight? If the Joshua fight does not happen, the fight I want to see from Tyson Fury is Dillian Whyte. At the end of the day, I've had my problems with Dillian Whyte, some of the narratives that were spun in regards to Dillian Whyte's plight with the WBC, but nevertheless, he is a good fighter, he does have a good resume, he's a good puncher with that left hook, and he's a strong dude, man. He's been a top 5, top 10 heavyweight for the last, 4 or 5 years now. So Dillian Whyte is certainly a credible title challenger for Tyson Fury, and it's an exciting fight, a fight that people would want to see. So, you know, Tyson Fury, for me, Dillian Whyte would be the fight to make if the Joshua fight does not happen. There's no excuse for for Tyson Fury to be fighting the likes of Thomas Schwarz, if this fight does fall through. If he does that, then that's an absolute embarrassment as far as I'm concerned. So for me, for Tyson Fury, it has to be the Dillian Whyte fight. That makes the most sense right now when you look at who's available, etc., who's credible. That fight would make the most sense for Tyson Fury. Quite frankly, I've got no interest in a third fight with Deontay Wilder. At the end of the day, the second fight was as one-sided as a fight can get. Not really even remotely competitive. In my opinion, we know who the better fighter is between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. When Tyson Fury wasn't half-cooked, he destroyed Deontay Wilder. And even in the first fight, it was obviously called a draw, but we all know who won that fight. That was a 60% Tyson Fury, coming off coke, coming off alcohol, and he still fucking outboxed Deontay Wilder. We know who the better fighter is there. There's no need to see it a third time as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, I strongly suspect that Tyson Fury is all wrong for Dillian Whyte, but at least it's someone different, somebody else to add to the resume in the meantime. I think Dillian Whyte would make the most sense for Tyson Fury. These are the sort of fights I want from Joshua or Fury should this undisputed fight not happen. Don't get me wrong, I want to see this fight as much as anybody. At the end of the day, I am a boxing fan, but if it doesn't, we have to move on. I'm not one of these people out there who are super militant with this and say, oh, if this fight doesn't happen, I'm not going to cover boxing, I'm not going to talk about boxing. That's nonsense. I love boxing, for better or worse. I'll always cover the sport. And listen, at the end of the day, obviously the fight we want is Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not other fights that I'm interested in involving these guys if it's not against each other, So there we go. That's just my 2 cents on this whole situation. I do have, slightly more concern that this fight won't happen next. But, at the end of the day, if it doesn't happen, then we need to move on, and these guys need to move on and, fight credible guys. That's all I can really say on the matter, Again, I want this fight to happen, as much as anybody. I'm not quite as emotionally invested as a lot of people are. As you guys know, I don't really have a dog in this race. I'm not really a big fan of Joshua or Fury, to tell you the truth. But obviously, I want to see it from a competitive standpoint and what it would mean for the sport in the UK, So, yeah, at the end of the day, I'm sure a lot of you guys want to hear rah, rah, rah. I'm not going to upload again if this fight doesn't get made next. That's not the case with me. At the end of the day, while Joshua Fury is one of the fights I want to happen the most, but at the end of the day, there are still a whole host of other fights out there that I am interested in. And listen, if Joshua versus Fury doesn't happen next and one of these guys gets knocked out in the interim, then so be it. I certainly won't lose any sleep, so it is what it is. Anyway, share your thoughts below. What do you make of this video? I know it's a bit of a downer almost, but honestly, listen, I want this fight to happen, of course, but listen, if it got announced that, let's say tomorrow, that this fight fell through and it's not happening next, yeah, I'll be disappointed for 5 minutes, and then I'll watch Joe Smith Jr. versus Maxim Vlasov. It is what it is, man. It's part and parcel of being a boxing fan. It's like being in a relationship with some crazy fucking bitch. You really should pull out, but, that pussy's too bomb. So, it is what it is, man. Share your thoughts below. It's been your guy, Delboy. Peace.